respectful of our panelists' time and everyone who's watching here today. Welcome to the next in our series of town halls here at the Asheville Area Chamber of Commerce. My name is Corey Atkins. I'm the Vice President of Public Policy and General Counsel for the Asheville Chamber. And today we're going to be speaking about something that's probably close to a lot of your hearts, whether you're a business owner, homeowner, or a renter and tenant. And that is the first bill you probably pay every month. My guess is for many of us is your rent or your mortgage. And as we may or may not, you may or may not know, there's been a moratorium on evictions for mortgage on the federal level for the last few months during the coronavirus pandemic. But today we're going to talk about, now that rents are coming due again and the moratorium has expired, what are some options that we have and that you have as a small business owner, as a local resident in light of those facts. We are joined here today by an expert panel, and I want to welcome all of them at this time. Jake Farr is attorney with the Van Winkle Law Firm and also a tenants advocate, represents a lot of tenants here in town. Chris Murray is the Chief Credit Officer for Mountain BizWorks. Joe Ward, who is the Regional Executive for First Bank here in Asheville, and Stephanie West, who is a commercial broker with Whitney Commercial Real Estate. Thank all of you for agreeing to be with us here today. We really appreciate it. Before we get to the panel, though, I would also like to extend a few extra thank yous and tip of the hat to Franzi Charon, who is head of Asheville Grown here in Asheville, as well as Megan Rogers with the Asheville Downtown Association. They really brought this idea and this concept to bear in mind today and thought it would be best for us to organize this in a way that's going to be beneficial to a lot of you here. And so thanks, Franzi and Megan, for your help in organizing this event. You know, President Trump had an executive order, as I mentioned earlier, that directed, the moratorium expired on eviction, and recently signed an executive order that many of you may have read about, saying that in the headline was something to the effect of the moratorium on evictions has been extended. Well, the executive order didn't really do that. What it did do was direct regulators to study whether an eviction moratorium is necessary, and have some of those organizations like DHHS, the Federal Housing Financing Agency, and to investigate whether they could appropriate money for rental assistance. It did fall short, however, just so we're clear, of reinstating the federal eviction ban that really covered about 12 million folks in government-backed properties. So just so we're clear, that's what's going on now. I also read in the Washington Post that there was a study that says that 30 to 40 million American renters are at risk of eviction in the coming months. And that compares with your average yearly eviction rate of about 3.5 million people. And that's due mostly to the coronavirus pandemic, people losing their jobs and things like that. So while we're looking to the local governments, to state for assistance, and we're awaiting another coronavirus relief package from Congress, which we certainly won't get at least in the next month. They're on recess until September. What are some other things that we can do? What are some options that you have as a business owner or renter here in Asheville, or as a landlord trying to pay your mortgage and working with your bank or your lender? We're going to talk about today about some of those options that you have. And I really want to start off with, before we get into those solutions, setting the table a little bit. And if some of you are unfamiliar with what we're dealing with here and what the options are and what we're hearing, we do have people here that are feet on the ground. And without further ado, I'd like to go to you, Jake, if you don't mind. And let's talk a bit about your clientele. What are things that you're hearing from your clients? What are things you're hearing out in the community about what the issues are and what people are facing currently? And have you been able to successfully work out some things for those folks going down the line?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Corey, for the introduction. And I want to echo your thanks to Franzi and Megan for putting this together. We've been dealing with this for several months now, since this all came out in March, and there have been a variety of different issues that come across my desk. Just to give a little background on my practice, I guess, to orient people, I work in the business practice group at Van Winkle Law Firm, and that practice has me interacting with a lot of small businesses and entrepreneurs here in the area. Again, tackling a wide range of issues that come up from day to day. Within that, I am typically focused on finding funding for businesses and assisting them in capital raises in ordinary times. So that is still an ongoing part of my practice. And to some extent is really an acute need for businesses now when you have a cash flow issue or a business interruption. The need to find access to capital is certainly ever present. And I know Christopher will speak to that later as well. I guess drilling into some of the issues that have come up since March and are still recurring issues for businesses, the payment of rent and mortgage is still a primary issue. It was a concern in March. We got a little bit of relief with PPP, but I would say that was temporary relief at best for folks. I kind of try to think of these issues from a variety of different angles because there's not a one size fits all approach for the business owners. So again, I think about are there some policy based solutions to these issues? And of course, Corey has his pulse on what's going on at the federal level and the state level in terms of policy solutions for businesses. And then are there some negotiation or litigation strategies that are available to business owners? And again, we like to tackle that from a negotiation or transactional perspective first, and then litigation as a last resort. But that has involved recently for me, reviewing lease agreements that that businesses have entered into with their landlord, and seeing if we can poke some holes in it, seeing if there's room to work. If there's nothing in the actual within the four corners of the lease, can we just open a conversation with the landlord and have a dialogue and say, this is the situation we're in. We've been a good tenant for X number of years. We're going through a tough time right now. Can we get an abatement or a deferral on our rent temporarily, and we'll make it up, through X, Y, and Z. Again, there are some solutions beyond that we've figured out. There's no one size fits all approach, and that's the sort of the tough nature of where we are right now. It involves kind of reviewing your lease, digging into your individual situation, and having a conversation about what options might be available to you.
I mean, I think that's a good starting point. And Chris, he mentioned your gig there at the Mountain BizWorks, and I'm sure you have many clients as well, and folks and business owners who are coming in looking for options. Because again, this is, if you don't have a space to operate in, although sometimes I think we're seeing businesses are trying to be more nimble about even needing full-on brick and mortar space, but the majority of our businesses still do need some sort of space. What are you seeing? What are you hearing from them, and what are you guys able to offer up there at Mountain BizWorks?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen quite a range of situations, where the landlord's been completely unwilling, and in some cases, maybe even unable to provide any relief. Not every landlord, owns their real estate free and clear. I mean, they may have a mortgage and didn't get relief from the lending institution, although I think that would be rare if they had requested such. But we've not had any of our clients evicted from their space, but we've had several where they didn't get any meaningful relief from the landlord. We have played a role in terms of a conduit to disaster lending. And so one of the things that I would encourage people to do is to make sure that you've accessed those resources as broadly as possible. Everybody is probably familiar with PPP. Of course, access to that program ended on the 8th of this month, which was, known as the forgivable loan. Whether or not there's another round of that, there's been some energy for that, but I wouldn't count on it. So if you've gotten access to that, great. A lot of people did, I don't know about a lot, a reasonable number of people did confuse that with EIDL, which is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, which was a nightmare when this whole thing hit. Many of you may have gotten access to the grant. That doesn't mean that you actually got access to the loan. So if you somehow never got a response back in March and April, I highly encourage you to reapply for the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. It's by far the best terms of any loan you're going to ever get. So that would be high on my list of things for you to look at. It is a very easy application process. I took someone through it yesterday, had an approval within 10 minutes. And you can actually then choose your loan amount. So I don't know how close to funds being exhausted on that program, how close that is, but you definitely should apply for that. The other thing local to North Carolina is the Rapid Recovery Loan. There are multiple organizations partnering with actually the state of North Carolina. It's being managed by the Rural Center and Thread Capital. So it was not aptly named initially because it wasn't much rapid about the recovery loan process. But I can assure you the process has gotten much shorter. And, you know, if you've got dinged up credit, don't let that hold you back. I have really seen people get approved that, you know, otherwise might not. So there's a real energy toward getting money to you if your business warrants it. So, and by what I say warrants it, you know, if your business did $5,000 in revenue last year, it might be a little bit of a challenge for you to, you know, to access some of these loan monies. Unless your business has taken off in 2020. And then clearly, if you need help on a local basis and want to work directly with Mountain BizWorks, we can kind of help you find the right pathway. So I won't ramble further, but I really highly emphasize if you haven't gotten EIDL, definitely access those monies if you need them.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, and we'll come back to that, I'm sure. I would encourage everyone to look at watch the last town hall we just did. We had Sharon Harvey on there, who is the Western representative for the SBA, the Small Business Administration. And Sharon said the exact same thing you just said. You know, a lot of people got frustrated early in the process and never went back to it, or they got turned down because of bad credit or some other strange reason. And she was very encouraging about saying, please apply again. Please come to me. Come to guys like you there at Mountain BizWorks, go to the SBTDC or the Western Women's Business Center, and all those resources are there to help you, but definitely don't give up and definitely try again. Stephanie, I want to come to you next about your clients, but before I do that, and maybe because it's in alphabetical order too, it makes sense to me now to go to Joe. Joe is the regional executive for First Bank, and you're on the lending side, Joe. So you're not dealing with the renters strictly, you're dealing with the people who are paying those mortgages. And so, but you guys have to pay bills too, right? We saw in 2008 what happens when banks collapse and how bad that can be for our economy. So this isn't something that can just be a relief and it stops at a certain ceiling. You know, that there has to be available relief and flexibility at all levels, including for lenders. So what are you seeing in your industry, and are you able to get relief either federally or from the state?
Well, what we've done from the very beginning is and we're pretty fortunate to be, majority of our business is definitely local. And so we've been staying in contact with our borrowers from the very beginning, and bankers been really in touch with them, seeing what their needs are going to be and trying to foresee and not using a cookie cutter approach. We do work with a lot of, as you mentioned, a lot of commercial real estate borrowers and investors that do have tenants that they're working with. I was thinking when Christopher said, there are some landlords that they've seen that have not budged and not helped. We fortunately, knock on wood, we have not seen many of the folks that we work with that have taken that approach. We've seen a really collaborative, helpful environment with most of our borrowers and our businesses. We do see the tenants as well. We may not bank them from a credit standpoint, but we of course bank them from business relationships. And so we've seen both sides of it. And I think I can't speak for all banks, but most banks have been really willing to work with borrowers through this time and in the way of deferrals, either full deferrals on monthly P&I payments or interest only if it fits for a period of time. We've really worked hard to work with those borrowers to be able to pass that on to their tenants. And we've seen that in most cases, that in very many cases where they're coming to us and saying, hey, my revenue, it may not have dropped to zero, but it's gone from, it's down to 60%. And so is there something that you can do, and we can pass that on and work with our renters? So we've just tried to be there to be a part and help in that scenario. We've been able to respond pretty quickly, in those cases and help our borrowers. The PPP was a big part of our support in the month of April, when that was very, very heavy. And, so part of that can be used for mortgage payments, some of the piece that can be forgiven. We have we're obviously bound by what the regulations and what the regulators will allow with banks. So we've worked within that framework. There's been some easing on the amount of time that we can go out before it changes the class of asset within banking. So we've worked within that. I think the question going forward, as we go deeper into the pandemic, is what are we going to see? What are the banks going to see from a regulation standpoint to continue on to allow us to have the flexibility to help borrowers? And that's just among many of the unknowns, but that's a big unknown within the financial industry. I would have to think that there'll be some need for and political pressure for the regulators to work with banks to allow us to work with our customers and help get through the pandemic.
Joe, something that I've seen, and thank you for that, something I have seen some banks doing is just sort of a clean forbearance, I would say. It's like a forbearance that doesn't obviously hurt your credit. They don't charge interest during that time, and it's strictly due to COVID relief. I know some banks are offering that. Is that pretty common? Is that something you might see continue?
Yeah, some of that deferral, and there was early on, there was some, I think banks were dealing with it differently and working probably within their systems to figure out, if we defer this, where is it going to be paid back, and where, and for the most part, I think there were some early instances of, like, after 90 days or so, then you're going to have to start making up. Well, that's even more punitive in my opinion, and in the bank. So what we've done is, and what many are doing, are putting that principal, and in some cases interest, on the back end of the loan, and being able to work on that. So,
okay, thank you for that. And next, certainly last but certainly not least, Stephanie. Stephanie's a commercial broker with Whitney Commercial. I would encourage all of you, I know Stephanie has a short presentation, but I would encourage all of you, as you're listening to this and what you've heard so far in your own business, feel free to tell us in the chat, what's something you've run up against. Have you heard of a helpful solution? If you have, please share it with us, and we'll share it with the group. But ask any questions you want there in the chat box, and we'll get to those right after this. But Stephanie, you're dealing in the commercial world mainly, right? And so what are you doing? Is there something you can do as a broker to help with some of these deals up front as far as structuring these? Or are clients even asking you to come back in and say, hey, can you help me work with the landlord and work out some kind of deal? And I'm just interested to see from your side and your unique angle, what what's going on with everything that's happening.
Yeah, for sure. So I think these guys did a really good job about talking about a lot of the resources that are available. My side is mostly focused on those negotiations that are happening between landlords and tenants. And so, since March, a big focus of those negotiations have been rent relief. And now we are leaning towards some negotiations around those deferred payments that are coming due. And I don't think anyone thought we'd still be in phase 2 in August. So, originally when folks agreed to those deferred terms, I think we all thought we'd be in a little bit different situation than we are today. So I've been on both the landlord and the tenant side of these negotiations. So that's given me an opportunity to see things from both angles. And ultimately understand really what it takes to reach an equitable solution for both parties. And so I'm hoping that I can maybe offer a couple tips to tenants just to maybe help them leverage themselves a little bit when they go into some of these negotiations with their landlords. So the biggest mistake that I see tenants make is that they ask for rent relief, but they put the burden on the landlord to propose terms, right? So I think they're really hurting their chances of success by doing that. And I think that tenants should be prepared to propose terms based on what their financial needs are for their own business. So, back in March through May, landlords seem to have more of an emotional response to rent relief requests. A lot of relief was sort of earmarked for retail and restaurant tenants. So we've sort of evolved a bit, and now landlords are taking more of a fact-based decision-making process towards some of these requests. So they want specifics. They want to see how the financials are going to impact them, and essentially how that rent relief is going to pencil into their financials of their building overall. So I would say for tenants, develop a plan, propose terms, and talk about your business performance, right? So I encourage tenants to show their cards. I think that there's a lot of requests that I see come through that say, oh, I'm struggling, I really need help. But it's hard to gauge, what that means. And so, if sales are down, show a profit and loss statement compared to this time last year, right? If you just made a huge capital expenditure in January and you sort of depleted your safety net, and your timing wasn't great, explain that to the landlord. Explain why you're in that particular situation. If you have non-negotiable expenses as part of your business operations, and when you couple that with the rent, it's just overwhelming overhead. Show those numbers to your landlord. So really, I guess, educate them on what your struggles are. And so, whether anyone wants to admit it or not, the first thing that landlords are thinking when you ask for rent relief is, do they truly need it, or are they taking advantage of the situation? So just take that objection off the table from the get-go, right? Come with a plan, come with some terms, and come with what you're struggling with, as far as financially with your business. So.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And Jake, you should probably use that in your practice to take that structure to people. And I think that not being ashamed, especially right now, if eviction's on the line, why not, right? I mean, why not take that chance if that's something you're concerned about? We did get a couple of questions by email prior to this started, and I would love to. I'm going to kind of throw these out there, but if it seems to make sense for one person to answer over another, that's fine. But someone said that their lease is up soon. They're not sure if they'll be able to continue doing business. they feel they can keep their doors open through December, but it's the winter. Obviously, business is a little down for this person. The landlord is willing to offer them month to month once the current lease expires, which is in September. So I suppose they plan on going to month to month after that. And would it make sense for them, though? I guess the question is to work up a new lease with their landlord to indicate that it's month to month now. I don't think that's possible. Maybe the newest one, I think is what they mean. Or can they just revisit it once December comes? That's a bit confusing, but does that make sense? Is now a good time to go back and ask for renegotiation of a lease? Have you seen that happen much, either Jake or Stephanie? Is that something that's happened that often? I think what this person's saying is, instead of going month to month, should I just negotiate a brand new lease altogether? Is what seems to be the cleanest way to ask that question. Maybe the compliment rate, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose it depends on how long you want to control the property, right? So if you want to control it beyond a month-to-month basis, yeah, you need to lock in a longer term. If you are on month-to-month, your landlord has the ability to essentially kick you out if they find a tenant that is willing to commit to a longer term. So that's something to keep in mind. You can always shoot for a longer term with the termination right after a certain period of time. Those are a little bit hard to get without penalties. But it just depends on I guess, your business and, if that's something that makes sense.
I would add that it does depend upon how important the property type is. I mean, if you don't, if you're a restaurant, clearly moving might be difficult, or even a retail business, location can be pivotal. So I think that would determine a lot how I would make that decision. Obviously, the relationship with the landlord is important. The other thing to keep in mind too is that if you are considering, if you do need financial assistance, a lot of lenders don't want to provide capital longer than the term of the lease, so that's the other thing to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, I think that's solid advice, especially from the lending standpoint. And this might go to you too, Chris, or it could even be directed at Joe, depending on the situation. But this person said that their landlord was kind enough to defer their rent from April to July, but now they want the tenant to pay all the deferred months rent in full by the end of September, plus the current rent. So that would be for August and September. Yet, of course, their revenue is down about 40% for the year, and they're probably not going to be able to make that deadline. And of course, they're worried about being evicted. What options do these folks have, Chris? I know you mentioned the EIDL loan. PPP, of course, is closed. So if they haven't gotten that without a new round coming from a new coronavirus relief bill, they can't rely on that. What options would someone in this situation have?
Well, I mean, EIDL is clearly meant for situations like that, as is the rapid recovery. Then there's also SBA micro loans, which is a standard SBA product. So accessing money right now is, generally if you've got reasonable credit, where you've got a history of showing that you've paid people back, should be fairly open to them. I think and I guess Stephanie might want to, or Jake might want to speak to this. I mean, I would want to look and see what was actually put in writing with the landlord relevant to the lease. I don't know if it was all verbal and there's been no written notification. I don't know how much leverage they may or may not have to force payment by September. But I think Stephanie or Jake probably need to comment on that front as to what they may try to negotiate with the landlord. I would advise them to go back and say, hey, it's not realistic from a cash flow standpoint for me to catch it all up by September.
Yeah. Chris, are you aware of any grant programs where someone's just not apt to get? We have had some business owners reach out to us and just say, I can't reasonably take on any more debt right now, as great as the terms as most of these loans are. Are there any other options for them?
I think the state of North Carolina had a grant program around employee retention, which, wasn't particularly helpful in the early days because no one could really justify bringing back employees, really, because they couldn't sell anything. I'm not aware of anything that, outside of the EIDL grant, which is no longer available, or the PPP that's effectively forgivable for those purposes.
Yeah.
I mean, there could be something that's esoteric to a specific industry, there was the TDA grant, which would have clearly, that we participated in or administering, that would have helped a lot for that type of use. But I don't know of any second round of that. So I really don't.
Yeah, and there was the one Buncombe Fund, which was local, and Kit Kramer, our CEO, chaired that, and they gave out about $1.3 million. She just reported to the county commission last night on their final report. So, but again, that's not here right now. The other thing, the job retention grant fund program you just mentioned, that's something that just came out. Those applications are open. That is a grant, but it's a finite set of money. So and it's, of course, you have to meet, I think, a 90% employee retention rate during a certain period. And so, of course, like you said, that might be tough for some folks to show that on paper. It's hard to know, but that is out there.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a retailer and there's two of you, let's say, it might really work for you, actually.
Right, and that's a grant. But again, I think it's $15 million for the entire program, and once it's used up, it's used up. It's a one-off sort of thing. The other thing I'll mention that I don't think you mentioned, Chris, but I learned about for the first time last week from Sharon Harvey again at the SBA is the Carl loans, and these are for businesses and underserved census tracts that are almost. I mean, the terms are just unbelievably beneficial to the business, and the SBA pays the first 6 months. Of the principal and the interest. And so if you're a business in one of those underserved census tracts, which we have quite a few around Asheville and Buncombe County, that's something to look into. And I wasn't aware of it until last week. I think it's a relatively new program, and I'm not sure what it stands for. It
stands for Community Advantage Recovery Loan.
Exactly.
There's a reason I didn't mention it. And because both the SBA Micro and the Community Advantage Recovery Loan, Carl, both do, for any Luna loans, they are going to make your first 6 months of payments. So for example, the SBA Micro, or Carl for that matter, they kind of really are somewhat symbiotic, is, if you have a $50,000 piece of equipment that you need because, my God, this pandemic has created, some great new opportunity for you, and you've got great cash flow, heck, get a 12-month SBA micro loan and half your payments made. So there's some absurd benefits to it. Mountain BizWorks are not going to approve you for a 12-month loan unless the business can support the cash flow. So, don't let your eyes get too big thinking about that. But it expires at the end of September. So basically, it's got to be fully funded by the end of September. And I can speak from Mountain BizWorks standpoint. We're trying to probably close about a dozen of those loans in September, and I don't know how we're going to do it, but we'll figure it out. So if you are going to go that route, they need to jump on it like ASAP. So.
Okay. Well, good to know. And I know y'all are super busy right now, Chris. This is amazing what all you've taken on lately from this. But
let me add one other thing. One of the benefits of the Carl is, for example, we're about to close a $250,000 one. You're able to get up to 9% of the loan amount in technical assistance. So, for example, with respect to that $250,000 loan, that's $22,500 in technical assistance that, effectively we can help them build out their entire, online platform, website, so a lot of things tied to the pivot and the adaptation that a business needs to be thinking about. There's money for that. So, the interest rate in that case is not going to mimic the EIDL by any means, But in terms of, and the term's probably going to be more like 10 years max, typically.
Okay, good to know. Our good friend Sage Turner, who of course is a chair of the Downtown Commission and city council candidate and downtown business owner and developer, local developer here, and advocate. She just sent me a really good stat. I didn't have this prior, or I would have probably shown this and found a way to screen share it, but I do have it here on my phone. They surveyed downtown businesses on whether or not they'd be able to pay their rent or receive some sort of deferment or other solution from their landlord. So this gives us a little bit more sense of the numbers, although we've kind of talked about this as a group already. About 114 responses from downtown businesses. Some people, about 21% or so, own their own location, so they don't really qualify. So out of the other 75%, about 37% be able to pay their rent as planned. So that's not fantastic, but better than it could be. Renegotiating their lease, about 10% have done that. So that has happened a good amount. Someone asked about that earlier. And I'll comment on another one that's in the chat section that makes a lot of sense for folks. A landlord allowed them to delay their payment. Around 30% have done that. So about a third have been able to talk to their landlords. And who knows how many had even tried this, but I think it's out there, and obviously landlords understand the situation, as Stephanie discussed. And then about 5% say they're at risk of losing their space and just cannot pay. So thank you, Sage, for sharing that with me. I really appreciate it. Those are definitely interesting numbers and something to consider as we talk about this. Tony in the chat did share with the panel, but I want to share it with the entire group, that they have a long-term triple net lease and asked their landlord for a 25% reduction in the base lease amount until the end of the year, and they were able to get an agreement on that. How would a triple net lease work, Jake, if you want to talk about that, and the decrease in the base, how would that affect the overall cash flow for somebody, and would you recommend doing something similar?
Yeah, I think it's a good example of a creative solution to a problem, and there's been a lot of good advice going around from Christopher on sources of funding that's out there, and then from Stephanie also. I appreciated her advice on how to approach those conversations with landlords. Again, it's if you kind of think about it as a tenant, your problem becomes your landlord's problem. And how can you get on the same page and just solve this problem? If you think that, and I don't know when it was that Tony may have renegotiated this lease, but if you think about this as a relatively short to medium term problem with your cash flow, where, for example, we're hopeful that a vaccine will come in the spring, or this thing will otherwise be under pretty good control by then. How do we get from here to the spring when we think that our overall business model is sound and our financial history is sound? We just have to get through the next few months, and a reduction in base rent is I think a great way to do it for just a few months. And then again, you can demonstrate my financials and my history shows that I'm going to be a good tenant. I'm going to be able to pay, and that these few months are a relatively small drop in the bucket compared to a 10-year lease or a longer term relationship. So I think it's a good strategy. I also want to touch on a point that Christopher made earlier, which is and it relates to the survey from Sage that you're talking about. If there is, because we have heard just anecdotally about some folks that are reaching agreements with their landlords, and those may not be in writing. So we always prefer and recommend that those be in writing, so that you don't subject yourself to some type of claim later from your landlord. You could be in technical default without knowing it, even though you're sort of complying with a handshake agreement over these last few months. So whatever it is you decide to do, get it in writing, whether it's an abatement, deferral, some other renegotiation of that agreement.
Yeah, as a former recovering trial attorney myself, Jake, I will second that. Please get it in writing if you do make substantive changes like that or material. Stephen, we have a question for you from Kimmy. Do you recommend commercial lessees restructure their deal to reduce flat rate and include percentage of sales, even if it's just an incremental change?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, percentage rents have been a creative way to, um, get some type of rent relief now, because there's essentially some cost sharing there with the landlord. So, and yeah, so I think that's just one way to structure a deal that, especially for restaurant or retail tenants, specifically, that makes a lot of sense. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, if you already have that, it's probably been really, really helpful to you in these last 6 months, I'm sure, if you're a retailer anyway. Um, Go ahead.
Yeah, you essentially get a break on the front end, on your rent, and then as ideally as your sales grow, the landlord eventually recoups a portion of that, to sort of, I guess, reimburse them for just that deficit in the rent early on. So and it all depends on how much that percentage rent is. It has to be sustainable. It can't be an unrealistic number. So lots of specifics revolving around that, but it's for sure a good solution.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for that, Kimmy. That's a really good suggestion. Joe, this question's for you. If a commercial mortgage holder has already taken advantage of a 90-day forbearance period from their bank, is it likely that the bank will offer another forbearance period if it's needed in the future? And my guess is I know some may have done a 6-month, but say if it was a 3-month and there's a break, is there likely they could get another one in the future? I think is what they're asking.
Yeah, I think I think banks are going to want to work with folks, and of course, you would want to come prepared to your banker to kind of tell the story. Here's where I am. Here's where our business is. We had that first 90-day period. We are now foreseeing a need to have another 90-day, but come prepared with what what you're doing from a planning standpoint to the best that you can with the unknowns, but what you're doing from a planning standpoint going forward. And of course, there may be some look at from a credit perspective of what's that income going to look like, going forward, and how we're looking at that. But I think there's flexibility to be able to do that and work with folks. And I think from that question, I'm assuming that's like you've had the first 90-day, you've now seen that this is going to go on longer and you need that relief for a greater 90 days. I don't think the question is rooted in, is there some 90-day out in the future that would be, affected? But each case is kind of different. I mean, we've seen some where we're working with borrowers where they got through that first 90 days, they've seen some revenues pop back up, but they may be seasonal. So they may be looking in the fourth quarter, like it may, decline a little bit more. So it may behoove them to pay full payments for a couple of months. And then as they get into the fourth quarter, as things stay depressed, they may need a 90-day there. So I think there is some flexibility to do that. Getting beyond that next 90 is where the question will really come in, is what flexibility will we have from a regulatory environment to work with folks.
All right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Joe, hit on something that I'm sure people have figured out by now. If they didn't already have like a disaster plan or like a worst case scenario plan for their business, certainly they've developed one now, or they need to develop one ASAP, because I think you go in asking for assistance from a bank, especially from a commercial standpoint. It's just like if I was coming in to see you and I had a startup. And the first thing you're going to see is my business plan. What's your plan for, growth and marketing, and how are you going to make revenue and that kind of thing? And what's your overhead going to be every month? So I think approaching it just like that, just in case, and you might get it anyway, but I mean, I think that having that plan is going to benefit you in the long run, but certainly I think most commercial lenders are going to want to see something like that.
Sure. And, Stephanie hit on something earlier about being prepared and going in with, don't go in and just ask for the relief to the landlord, go in with a proposal. And it's kind of the same scenario. If rather than just coming in and saying, I need the relief, we're looking at our credit. It's a risk business for us, so we're looking at for what is your plan and what are you coming. Traditionally, when you look at underwriting and as bankers and lenders, you're looking to the past as to be indicative of what the business is going to look like in the future. Well, that's kind of out the window right now. If I look at a return in the business financials from 2019, that's not going to be indicative. So we have to look at it completely different. And for the borrowers to come in prepared and having those plans to the best of their ability. I mean, obviously there's unknowns that we're dealing with that can't be easily planned for, but that's key in coming in and working with your banker, and that helps your banker tell the story to the credit team within the bank and get a solution for you.
Yeah, thank you. Jake, we have a legal question here. Are tenants able to invoke force majeure or what we call acts of God sometimes to terminate leases early without penalty?
We haven't seen that too much. I mean, typically where we see that sometimes is in the case of maybe an insurance policy where there's a specific mention of, say, a viral outbreak specifically termed out in a policy where you might be able to recover on a business interruption or something of that nature. I imagine, so again, I don't litigate these matters, just to be clear. I typically work on the transactional side and try to negotiate them. If it gets to litigation, that's where I'm going to hand it off to one of my partners to handle that. I imagine that that somewhere you have a commercial lease with enough money at stake, for a large enough premises, or a multi-tenant situation where there's been enough money at stake to litigate a situation such as that. But in general, that's not something that we're relying on or even considering for kind of small businesses here in the Asheville area. It's more of again, the way we triage that problem is, can we solve the cash flow issue with access to capital? If not, can we negotiate relief from the landlord and kind of treat it as a practical problem in that sense?
Yeah. You mentioned business interruption insurance. It was something that we lobbied hard for at the federal and state level to try to get COVID-19 specifically included in any sort of business interruption so the business could claim it. Would that work for a lease? I don't know, but I know that for that portion of it, it was something that obviously wasn't in any prior legislation because we've never dealt with this before. So that is an interesting perspective to hear it from that end. The next question might be directed towards me, but Tony asked, have we heard anything positive from DC about a second wave of PPP funding from our elected officials? Well, there actually was a second wave of PPP, but it's been closed now since August the 8th. So you can't apply for it anymore. I will tell you that it is certainly one of the things they're considering in the next coronavirus relief package. Nothing's guaranteed. Like, they are on recess until after Labor Day for the most part. They have, of course, we have the conventions going on the next 2 weeks, so a lot of politics are going on. But I do think we'll see something in September. My guess is that PPP will be a part of that. It looks like they're leaning towards something of that nature. I know one of the president's executive orders released some emergency funds that are meant to help out with some of these loan programs that Chris mentioned, but it's really a drop in the bucket from a national standpoint. And you're also pulling money from institutions like FEMA, which are probably going to need it here pretty soon because we're about to enter hurricane season and things of that nature. So it's out there. They're definitely talking about it. I think it's a real possibility, but it's really hard to know for sure. So we have one comment here on just to follow up on the force majeure issue, Jake, that some bankruptcy courts have granted rent payment relief, but not forgiveness based on those clauses. So that's, that could be an option if it got to that point. But of course, hopefully if you're in bankruptcy court, that's a whole nother ballgame than just worrying about paying your rent month to month. So, but it is something that's being recognized apparently for relief purposes. So we have a question here for Joe, Chris, and Jake. Does it make sense for businesses to go into to speak with their banker with an assistance plan, excuse me, using their projected peak and low revenue points since COVID-19, and so they aren't continuing to come back? Can y'all read that? So the business itself comes in with a plan to offer the banker based on the projected revenue out 12 months. So they're coming in for assistance, and plan for breaks and the loan repayment up front. Let's see. Yes. So I think the answer to that's probably yes, right, Joe? I mean, I think that's sort of what you were getting at as far as in a plan. What
Yes,
the
I think the more the more planning and dialogue that you can have with your banker, the better. And certainly coming in with a plan and looking at that, going through that exercise of putting together that pro forma of how you think it's going to look going forward is going to help you first as a business, and you know your business, and then it's certainly going to help the banker or the lender. And I would also say, there's the comment of, so you're not continuing to come back. I personally wouldn't feel like that you're intruding on your banker. That's what we're here for. So in our bank and my team, at least, we're wanting to have conversation on a regular basis. So we're reaching out to those lenders and to those borrowers and our customers and making sure that we're staying kind of up to date on how their business is going. That's our job. And I think our bankers have probably had more constant contact with our customers in the last 6 months than we've had in any other 6-month period. And that's good, because we need to be in lockstep with it to be able to help our borrowers. And if you don't have a banker that's going to help walk you through that, find the one that will.
And probably most people by this point in time have probably got updated financial information, certainly through the end of 2019, and hopefully maybe learned the hard way by not having that. Because if you don't have current financial information, it's going to be very hard for Joe and me to really make a decision. It's so there's one of the things I just will say: you don't abandon your financial bookkeeping, and take this opportunity to really, really grasp that. And if you need help in that regard, man, BizWorks has a lot of technical assistance, dollars to put to work. If your financial information is really incomplete, it's going to be really hard for us to figure out exactly what is maybe a reasonable pathway. So, but that said, don't let that keep you from coming to us at the same time. So I'm trying to, the door's open, but the pace at which we can make a decision may be delayed by what you walk in with.
Yeah. And thank you to Nancy just briefly for sharing the link to the job recovery grant, retention grant that we mentioned earlier. So hopefully many of you qualify for that. I will tell you that if you did get PPP, you can't get this. So that's something the state built in. This is sort of meant to be a gap filler, so to speak, from the state side. So just keep that in mind. But all the qualifications are listed on the website, and you can find out pretty easily if you qualify or not. Guys, I believe that sums up our questions that we have here today. And I will be respectful of everyone's time and your time. Thank you all so much for joining us here, but I would like to go down the line and give us 1 minute if there's a single takeaway that you can give everyone who's watching, whether they're a small business owner or lender or landlord, that they can take away from this today. And what would that thought be? And Stephanie, I'm going to put you on the spot first since you went last in the intros. I'm going to let you go first on this one.
Okay, cool. I had just a small call to action, I guess, to landlords that I wanted to address. And that is, I guess I've seen enough Western movies to know that you head them off at the pass, right? So, and what I mean by that is get a head start on any issues, right? So don't kind of hide in a corner and wait for tenants to approach you. when they're drowning, right? Go ahead and start, whether you have one tenant or 100, just start reaching out and checking on them and seeing how they're doing. And the intent isn't to solve or isn't to create problems. It's more so just a fact finding exercise. So, so I think this gives you a good opportunity to figure out how folks are utilizing space, specifically office tenants. Basically, understanding if they're going to be giving space back in the future and getting ahead of it. And that, it all may work itself out to where there are, creative ways to give those tenants the relief they need without the landlord, having to hemorrhage too much. So.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thanks again for being here. Joe.
Yeah, I would just kind of reiterate the theme of what I've been trying to say is just communicate with your banker. There's nothing wrong right now with over communication, I think, in this situation. And, it's a human tendency sometimes to not want to talk about negative stuff or bad news or deliver bad news. But one thing that for those of us in the lending world, we hate surprises, so it's much better to come up front with your banker if you're hitting, times where you're having tough issues that you're dealing with, reach out to your banker, talk through it. And a lot of times we can help you, but just communicate.
Thank you, Joe. And thanks again for agreeing to be here. Chris, any last sage words of advice from Mountain BizWorks and your team?
Well, I want to echo what Joe said. I think being proactive on the communication front is really pivotal. Transparency will go a long way toward, forgiveness, leniency, whatever the right word is. I mean, it's amazing how lending institutions and, when you're not surprised or you feel like someone's obfuscating, it's amazing how much more you can accomplish together. And certainly in this environment, it doesn't mean that Joe's going to say yes to everything you may need or want. Same thing for us. But, you can collaboratively come to maybe a win-win. And be assertive and proactive would be my key advice.
Thank you, Chris, and good luck over there. I know how swamped you guys are right now, so please keep up the good work for our community. We appreciate it. Jake.
Yeah, I guess I would talk about something that's a little bit closer to what we do in normal times, and we're still doing quite a bit of this work, which is mergers and acquisitions and fundraising, through equity, just general equity or venture capital. So that's still an option, and that can be a solution to a business owner's needs right now. If you think about finding a strategic investor who has the capital for a few months while you get on your feet, or finding a strategic buyer to be able to come in and take over and help streamline things and give you some capital and take some of those problems off your plate. So we're still doing deals. We're still seeing them get done. It's a bit of a challenging time. There's economic uncertainty. There's some political uncertainty on the horizon here in November. But this activity is still occurring, and that could be an out-of-the-box solution for some business owners.
Thank you so much, Jake. And thank you, Stephanie, Chris, and Joe for joining us here today. We really hope you got something out of this town hall. We want to see all of you thriving. Together, we do believe we can be more resilient here at the Asheville Chamber, and it's really taken a team effort in this community. And I'm really happy to see us come together and work on all these difficult issues that we have, regardless of what Jake is saying about the uncertain political climate, which of course we're all dealing in that reality. But I think the way our community's come together here recently throughout all this has really been impressive, and I hope it continues, and I hope we continue to work together to lift everyone's boats and making sure we're all are prosperous and our families are staying safe and healthy. So with that, this is Corey Atkins with the Asheville Area Chamber of Commerce signing off on our town hall on rent and mortgage relief. Good day, everyone. Stay safe and healthy out there. Thank you.